Hi, I'm here with Dr. Connie Kazri today, Professor of Education and Psychiatry at the Center for Autism Research and Treatment at UCLA. Thank you so much for being with us today. Today, Dr. Kazri is going to talk with us about autism and treatment for autism. So my first question is, if a parent is concerned that their child may have autism, what types of professionals can help them get some good assessment?
So I think it depends on the age of the child. If the child is very young, they should check with their pediatrician. Pediatricians are screening children now a couple of times before the age of 2, or hopefully they're screening infants, and so they would be a good person to contact. If their pediatrician doesn't seem to have any concerns, but the parent continues to have concerns, they should actually seek out an assessment from a psychologist or a Center for Autism if they have one in their area. But probably almost any area now has somebody with some expertise in autism specifically. So they should really seek out that evaluation. If the child is older and in school, they should ask the school psychologist for a recommendation or an assessment.
Before we go a little bit more into treatments that may help with kids who have autism, can you sort of briefly describe what kinds of things kids would be working on?
So again, it depends on the age. Autism is a developmental disorder, so it depends on age, it depends on severity. If they're really young, they're working on engagement with other people. Some of the early pre-linguistic skills. We know that very young children are showing specific problems in communication and language and in social relationships. They may also show some repetitive behaviors or behavioral issues. So those are the kinds of things that parents are noticing, and those are the types of skills or issues that they need to work on. When kids get older, they may also have some academic issues, particularly around reading comprehension, for example. So it depends really on the age. But I would say that social relationships continue to be an issue for most kids all the way up through adulthood.
And what are some treatments for autism that are considered evidence-based?
So we are actually developing more evidence-based treatments, and we have, stronger evidence for things that actually work. So right now, it's mostly behavioral interventions. So within a fairly large umbrella of applied behavior analysis, there are a number of different treatments that have an evidence base. So there's a variety of those treatments. And again, it depends on the age of the child and the severity. With young children, I think a developmental approach along with some behavioral strategies is probably most appropriate and has a pretty strong evidence base. As children get older and might maybe need social skills interventions, there are a number of evidence-based treatments. So again, depending on the age. It also depends on where you live and access to intervention. So that's a big issue that we're all dealing with. The disorder is a very significant disorder. Children need a number of hours of treatment when they're young. Once they get to school, they're in school, they need targeted, focused interventions for various kinds of problems, and sometimes access is an issue.
So you said they need a number of hours. Is there a recommended number of hours of treatment for young children?
Well, we do have a recommended number of hours. So it's not based on a very strong database in terms of comparing, say, is this many number of hours better than this many number of hours. But for most children under the age of 8, it's recommended that they get anywhere from 20 to 25 hours of treatment, and that treatment involves both behavioral, educational interventions, as well as some of the therapies like OT, PT, and speech. So again, access can be a huge issue. So for very young children, we recommend teaching parents and other people in their environment as to how to help the child so that we can fill in the numbers of hours that children need.
So you mentioned that these evidence-based treatments fall under a broader umbrella. I'm wondering if you can describe some of the things that a therapist who's using evidence-based interventions, some sort of strategies that they would use?
So in general, I think structure works pretty well for children with autism. So you want to have some structure, you want to be very consistent, you want to choose goals for that child that are developmentally appropriate. So if it's a very young child, you want to make sure that you're not giving them skills to accomplish that might be at their age, but developmentally they're much younger. So I think we want to target the skills more developmentally so that we don't have children who develop a lot of behavioral problems because they're frustrated. For a lot of our very young children, they need to have access to communication. So however that is, I mean, it could be through access to people and they're starting to develop words. It could be through some augmented system. So a lot of children use PECS or an augmentative system or an iPad. There are lots of different possibilities, but access to communication is really important.
So are there any treatments that are not recommended for autism?
Yes. Based on the evidence, there are actually quite a few treatments that probably aren't, well, they're not, they don't show any effect on core deficits or on functioning. And some of them are actually dangerous. And so we may not want parents to engage in those. Things like hyperbaric chambers, chelation have been shown to be not effective. They're also very expensive, potentially dangerous. So sometimes parents try them, and hopefully, the child is still safe. Others that don't seem to be effective, but that individual parents may find effective for their children and that may not be harmful, are things like diet, for some children. Some of the sensory approaches may be very useful for individual children, even though, in terms of a really strong evidence base, we don't see it. So I think those are things for parents to consider.
Are there any other important tips that you would give to parents if they're concerned about their child?
Well, I think you want to seek out experts. And so depending on the age of the child, sometimes your school district can be a very good resource. Certainly your pediatrician or other doctors can be a very good resource. So I think you want to seek out those resources, and I think other parents who have children. So try to seek out parents who can give you some good tips in your location.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.